I forego all discussion concerning those cities which at the outset have been dependent upon others, and shall speak only of those which from their earliest beginnings have stood entirely clear of all foreign control, being governed from the first as pleased themselves, whether as republics or as princedoms. These, as they have had different origins, so likewise have had different laws and institutions. For to some at their very first commencement, or not long after, laws have been given by a single legislator. That republic, indeed, may be called happy. On the other hand, some measure of unhappiness attaches to the state which, not having yielded itself once for all into the hands of a single wise legislator, for it is scarcely possible that a state in this position can ever, by any chance, set itself to rights, whereas another whose institutions are imperfect, if it have made a good beginning and such as admits of its amendment, may in the course of events arrive at perfection. It is certain, however, that such states can never be reformed without great risk, for, as a rule, in proof whereof we may instance the Republic of Florence, which was reformed in the year 1502, in consequence of the affair of Arezzo, but was ruined in 1512, in consequence of the affair of Prato. Desiring, therefore, to discuss the nature of the government of Rome, and to ascertain the accidental circumstances which brought it to its perfection, I say, as has been said before by many who have written of governments, that of these there are three forms known by the names monarchy, aristocracy, and democracy, and that those who give its institutions other, and, as many have thought, wiser teachers will have it, that there are altogether 6 forms of government, 3 of them utterly bad, the other 3 good in themselves, but so readily corrupted that they too are apt to become hurtful. The good are the 3 above named, the bad 3 others dependent upon these, and each so like that to which it is related. For a monarchy readily becomes a tyranny, an aristocracy an oligarchy, so that if the founder of a state should establish any one of these 3 forms of government, he establishes it for a short time only, since no precaution he may take can prevent it from sliding into its contrary, by reason of the close resemblance which, in this case, the virtue bears to the vice. These diversities in the form of government spring up among men by chance. For in the beginning of the world its inhabitants, being few in number, next arose the knowledge of such things as are honourable and good, as opposed to those which are bad and shameful. For observing that when a man wronged his benefactor, whence it came that afterwards, in choosing their rulers, men no longer looked about for the strongest, but for him who was the most prudent and the most just. But presently, when sovereignty grew to be hereditary, no longer elective, forthwith there began movements to overthrow the prince, and plots and conspiracies against him undertaken not by those who were weak, or afraid for themselves, but by such as being conspicuous for their birth, courage, wealth, and station could not tolerate the shameful life of the tyrant. The multitude, following the lead of these powerful men, took up arms against the prince, and he being got rid of, obeyed these others as their liberators, but this government passing afterwards to their descendants who, for the multitude loathing its rulers, lent itself to any who ventured, in whatever way, to attack them, when some one man speedily arose who with the aid of the people overthrew them. But the recollection of the tyrant and of the wrongs suffered at his hands being still fresh in the minds of the people, and because all governments inspire respect at the first, this government also lasted for a while, for suddenly liberty passed into license, wherein neither private worth nor public authority was respected. Whereupon, for this is the circle revolving within which all states are and have been governed, although in the same state the same forms of government rarely repeat themselves, because hardly any state can have such vitality as to pass through such a cycle more than once, and still together. For it may be expected that in some sea of disaster, I say, then, that all these 6 forms of government are pernicious 3 good kinds, from their brief duration the 3 bad, wise legislators therefore, knowing these defects, and avoiding each of these forms in its simplicity, have made choice of a form which shares in the qualities of all the first three, and which they judge to be more stable and lasting than any of these separately. For where we have a monarchy and aristocracy, and a democracy existing together in the same city, among those who have earned special praise by devising a constitution of this nature was Lycurgus, who so framed the laws of Sparta as to assign their proper functions to kings, nobles, and commons, and in this way established a government which, to his great glory and to the peace and tranquillity of his country, lasted for more than 800 years. The contrary, however, happened in the case of Solon, and although 40 years later the heirs of Pisistratus were driven out, and Athens recovered her freedom. But let us now turn to Rome, which city, although she had no Lycurgus to give her from the first such a constitution as would preserve her long in freedom, through a series of accidents, caused by the contests between the commons and the senate, obtained by chance what the foresight of her founders failed to provide. So that fortune, if she bestowed not her first favors on Rome, bestowed her second, because, although the original institutions of this city were defective, still they lay not outside the true path which could bring them to perfection. For Romulus and the other kings made many and good laws, and such as were not incompatible with freedom, but because they sought to found a kingdom and not a commonwealth. When the city became free, many things were found wanting, which in the interest of liberty it was necessary to supply, and although the kings of Rome lost their sovereignty in the manner and for the causes mentioned above, nevertheless those who drove them out, by at once creating two consuls to take their place, preserved in Rome the regal authority while banishing from it the regal throne, so that as both senate and consuls were included in that republic, it in fact possessed. It then only remained to assign its place to the popular element, and the Roman nobles growing insolent from causes which shall be noticed hereafter, the commons against them. In this way the tribunes of the people came to be created, after whose creation the stability of the state was much augmented. And such was the good fortune of Rome, that although her government passed from the kings to the nobles, and from these to the people, by the steps and for the reasons noticed above,